Good evening. Hello, good evening. Welcome, everybody. And thanks for being here. Hi, Carsten. Thanks for. Is Carsten someone else that's up at an ungodly hour?
No, he's German, not.
Oh, yeah. I wonder why everyone was saying. I mean, it's nice to see you, Carsten. I just wonder why everyone was saying hi. Thanks for joining us on the October Power Platform Happy Hour, where this evening we are joined by the legends of the legends that are Gustaf Westerlund and Leon Tribe. Leon very graciously got up at the Sparrow's Fart this morning to join us, and he's had approximately 3 hours sleep, fresh from a stint on Radio Free Nigeria, which I'm sure he'll tell you about. So we'll just do a quick code of conduct session, and then I'll get you guys to give us an introduction. As always, as we have done this year, we have a code of conduct for our happy hour meetings, which is to be aware of others and be friendly and patient and welcoming and respectful and open to all questions and viewpoints. Remember, not everybody's knowledge and experience is the same. Not everybody's opinion is the same. So it always works better if we are all understanding and appreciative of differences in levels of understanding, levels of knowledge, levels of experience, and of opinions. So always be kind and considerate to others. If you hear or see anybody doing anything on this happy hour that you think is unbecoming of community activity, then please do let me know, and we'll deal with it. Or if it's me that you want to complain about, which is the most likely scenario, then let Carl know and he will deal with it appropriately, or just or shout loudly. I don't mind. I'll never get offended by anything, so feel free to tell me off to my face. So tonight we're having a chat about wave 2. So instead of between two phones, we have between 4 idiots, which is nice. Carl is keeping legends in the house. Carl is keeping an eye on the chat, so do feel free to put your questions in there. And we'll try and ask them as we go, and we'll have an open, if we get time, we'll have an open session at the end. So if you want to come on to camera, or perhaps you don't, perhaps you just want to ask a question. But without further ado, I would like to have a short intro from Leon, please.
G'day. My name's Leon Tribe. I live in Sydney, Australia, down the other end of the planet. And it is quite early here, but that's okay. In terms of who I am, been working with CRM systems for about 25 years, something like that, which makes me feel very old. Originally a product called SalesLogix, and then got put on the beta training for something called Microsoft CRM, and pretty much been there ever since. Also an MVP, Microsoft MVP for business applications, which, as I imagine most of you know, is Dynamics and the Power Platform. And work for a company called Datacom, which is a Kiwi company run by New Zealanders.
Thank you much, Leon. That was nice and succinct, like it. And Gustaf, could you give us an intro about yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Gustaf Westerlund, and I'm originally from an island called Gotland in the middle of the Baltic Sea, but I live in Stockholm in Sweden. I've also lived a couple of years when I was younger in England, in Esher in Surrey. But now I live in Stockholm. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for quite a few years now. I'm hoping I will get it renewed. You never know. And I work as a solution architect, and I work for a company I started in 2010 called CRM Consulter now, but we're trying to sort of slowly move to a new name called CRMK because that's a lot easier to say in English. Or easier to say by English. I don't know, whichever way you want it. I work as a solution architect, and I since I own a company, I've been in tons of projects. But compared to Leon, I guess I'm sort of like a CRM noob. I only started with version 1.2 of CRM of Dynamics. It was called Microsoft Business Solutions at that time, I think, MBS.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was.
Microsoft
yeah.
BS. Oh my God, that is that's an error right there, isn't it?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Nobody thought
Definitely.
about it.
No, it's funny what people don't think about, isn't it? If it helps you, Leon, you're not that old, because I've been a recruiter for nearly 25 years and it's my third career. So yeah, I'm probably older than you.
I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't be able to tell.
I put Vaseline on my camera, so
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
the truth will come out when everybody meets me at South Coast Summit.
So were we talking about the new features of CRM3 that you now can install several installations in the same Active Directory?
We've gone a bit past that now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just wondering.
Yeah, I don't think we've got time to reminisce about how difficult your life was.
No, it wasn't difficult. It was fun.
Not at all.
No.
So I think we'll start off with so wave 2, yes or wave 2, yes or no, is probably the question. Would you rather say the things that you're most interested in, or do you want me to ask you questions about the stuff that I'm interested in?
I think I have one thing I can start with anyway. I think one of the things they're coming out now is saying that you really should be able to do everything from the new maker experience or admin experience.
That's a funny joke there, Gustaf.
Yeah. That's sort of what I want to discuss with you guys.
So they're claiming parity, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're claiming that they have all the features now, and I'm like, have you tried removing a solution in the new compared to the old, and like trying to get any kind of error messages out of it? I always try to remove solutions in the old interface because it's easier to understand what's going on than what's not going on. I don't know. Have you seen any other things that you think that's not fixed yet and won't be?
Me or
anybody?
Well, I think the one that came up recently was the hover help not being available anymore. The little tooltips. That's going to be a big problem for a lot of people, and I know they're moving towards it, and there is a way you can fix it. But that for me is a bit of a pain, a bit of a problem, seeing as they are on a accessibility pitch and trying to get everything as accessible as possible. But yeah, that's the one thing that I've seen that is like, oh, okay, we need to combat that. So
have any of you got customers, or do you, in your place where you work, data export service for synchronizing data to an Azure SQL database? As far as I understand, this has not yet been like unsupported and left behind. It's still supported, but it's the only way to access that is through the old interface, as far as I know anyway. I haven't seen them create any way of sort of accessing that otherwise. Maybe it's possible to do it manually, but none of you have any experience with that, because I'd see that as probably.
Yeah, I never used it.
I've used it, but I didn't know it was on. I hadn't seen it in the news, so.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of like a thing they might forget, because it hasn't been given any love for several years now. And I think if it works for some companies, they probably won't go to the data lake sync instead, because that's a bit more complicated, and they already have something working. So why change it? So that's okay. And I also think that some of the relationships, you can work with the relationships between the entities, but I think that there are still, from what I've heard from some colleagues trying it out, they said that it's not as clear as the old interfaces. And you don't really see everything. So I'm still a bit skeptical about this, that there will still be areas. So that's one thing I think it's interesting. And I did notice something that wasn't there, that I did expect to be there. Or I'm looking. If you know what I've been blogging about, like the last 4 articles in my blog, it's been about API service protections and entitlements. And API entitlements, and what they've been saying is that as soon as the report that sort of shows you how the usage you have per 24 hours, as soon as that goes GA, they will start enforcing the entitlements and the entitlement costs. so you have to start buying SKUs for that. And I have several customers with huge problems regarding this, because if you start doing the math for that, they become extremely expensive for companies for doing a lot of integrations. And there is no mention about that, as far as I could read anyway. So I'm wondering a bit about what's happening with that, because it's in the Microsoft documentation. You can find the SKU for buying more capacity from this in the price lists, but there's like no mentioning about it. I'm wondering if they might be rethinking it. I hope that, or if there's something else happening here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a bit worrisome anyway.
Yeah, no doubt we'll see what happens with it moving forward, though. The other thing that I thought was a bit, I wasn't really sure, or I'd like your opinions on, is the new advanced find.
Yeah. Leon, do you have any opinion on that? Because I do.
I haven't tinkered with it too much yet, I must admit, the advanced find. So yeah, no, look, go for it, Gus, because yeah, I haven't played with it too much.
I haven't tried the new one, but when I look at it, the pictures of it anyway, and also try the different, like, I don't know, it has to be rolled out yet, the new advanced find, because I mean, the old advanced find is sort of like a go-to place for like finding all the data in the instance, or all the data that you have, and also being able to like easily generate the fetch XML without going into Jonas's tool. And so there's lots of uses for that, and you also easily create fetch XML builder is a new advanced find. Yeah, that's more or less what we'll see anyway. So I think that might be a problem, because that's sort of a more advanced use case then you're just going into an entity and you want to search from there and maybe do more complex searching from within one entity. Because if you can't find that entity, where would you start? And that's typically where you don't go, like, go to click advanced find, you select the entity you want, and like, oh, these are all the entities in this system that this previous partner has set up. Now I can start looking at what's going on. So I think that might be maybe more use for XM Toolbox and that tools in there then, I guess.
Philip Cole hilariously put Fetch XML builder as the new advanced find.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's funny. So we'll see about that.
Yeah. The other thing that was particularly interesting for me, because I specifically have a problem with this, and I'm sure I'm not alone, is being able to delete users that are of disabled status.
Yes.
And all of the stuff, like.
And then this falls nicely into the category of, because there's always sort of two categories in the release wave for me. There's the stuff which is really exciting and new and shiny. So like, you know, I'm looking at my notes because it's 5 a.m. so I have no short-term memory. You mean the AI content for marketing, yeah. Right? So the fact that you can start an email now and it'll say, oh, clip it pops up and clip it says, oh, it looks like you're talking about, you know, whatever, warehouse management. Well, here's a snippet which you might want to include in your email. So you got that aspect. But so that's one. It's a bright, shiny new stuff. The other aspect, which with the releases, is the Microsoft constantly striving for adequacy on features. And I think that the one you mentioned, it falls squarely into that. It's finally we have adequacy, right? And there's a few of them, right? So there's things like creating segments for leads in custom entities. We can finally do that now, rather than be sort of stuck with contacts. It's like, well, yes, that's something that we've wanted for a while. That's good. It's interesting. There's always they sort of tout some of the features as amazing. It's like, I know that's what we've wanted all along. But thank you for delivering.
And I think it goes back to an interesting concept that they build things, they like put a lot of shiny things on top, like AI stuff, but then there's like some fundamentals that are not just there. And I'm really interested in the new omnichannel voice, but I'm wondering if they've like put all in the fundamentals there, so we can actually, this is the sort of setup. When somebody calls in, we identify them as an A customer, then they go this path. If they're not an A customer, go this path. And then it's like just setting up like normal functionality, that normal like call center systems have. And I'm wondering if that's the case, or if they're like, oh, we did really advanced voice-based sentiment analysis that's real time, and you can have a look at that in their the ongoing conversations dashboard. That's awesome. Because it's really nice, but like if you don't have the fundamentals, you like disqualify yourself anyway. So
yeah, they've got a new subject object now. So for cases, right? So
yes,
they've now because I wrote a blog, for this. I actually read the document and I thought I'll knock a blog article as well. I found a screenshot of the version 4 screen with the subject tree on it, and it hadn't really changed that much since at least version 4. I can't even remember if it was in there before then. But now they've basically leveraged what looked like to me they've leveraged the same control as what you've got for asset locations in field service. So in field service, you've got this little control where you got all your locations and you've got your different assets. You can see your location, you can search, and it lights up stuff in your hierarchy, etc. It looks like it's a similar animal. So I think they've borrowed that. But yeah, no, it's good that they do address the fundamentals.
I agree. Yeah. But the subject is what common ask I get from many of my customers is that they want to be able to select several subjects. But I don't think that they've added that functionality to it. The same data structure still, right?
Yeah. From what I can tell, you can only select one.
I remember being horrified that if you hadn't cleared down stuff like saved views and things like that people had made when their login became disabled, you were just stuck with them. There was nothing you could do about it. And I didn't know about Jonas's wonderful tool at that point, so I was stuck with all of these views I couldn't get rid of. But yeah. The other thing, I had a read of your blog earlier, Leon, and the other thing that I was super interested in that you also highlighted in there was the kind of bring your own data type setup.
And that's another thing that's in here is these quirky features which on the surface it's not obvious where they're going to bring value, but they almost certainly will, and that's a really good one. So all the feature is you can surface data from elsewhere into the timeline, and then that's it. But I see that as really useful. So where I'm speculating is you could surface your data from your ERP system. So it might be payments due, it might be whatever it is. It's some time related data and stick it in the timeline. So Microsoft haven't explicitly said this is where you're going to use this feature. Similarly to how they've now lit up Power Automate in the customer journeys. Right, they're not saying this is going to be useful for this business context. They're just sort of saying, we've turned this on. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets used. But it looks really good. This idea of bringing in the data and surfacing on the timeline, I can. That's got a broad range of appeal, I think.
We're doing that via an integration at the moment, actually creating post records to get that functionality, and unfortunately, we went live last week or the week before. So,
you're going to be real popular because have you sent the invoice yet?
But that's the whole point, isn't it? You sort of do these things and think, well, the only way I can get it into this view that people like, this timeline thing where they can filter and they can sort and it's available on everything, is to create these posts. And now they've gone, well, hang on a minute, we're doing it some other way. But I guess that's just the evolution of everything and any sort of part of the journey moving forward, isn't it?
Yeah. What about the Internet Explorer?
I noted that too. I think it's also an interesting thing. I think it was like last year I was at a bigger company in Sweden, and they still had a policy of using Internet Explorer for most things internally. I told them that Internet Explorer is no longer a browser; it is a compatibility solution. And they were like, what? And then I had to inform their IT about this, and they were like, yeah, okay, but we're still using this compatibility solution for browsing the internet, so thank you very much. So that's, I think there are large companies that will have a problem with using other things, or because they have certified Internet Explorer some time ago, and they might get stuck. The system will still probably work in Internet Explorer, at least for a while. But then there might be like new new things that won't be supported by that anymore. So I think that it's tricky. However, many of these like companies that want to have Internet Explorer or still use it, they are probably on-prem, or the majority of them might be anyway, like old banks and stuff like that.
Right. And
every time I get a new Windows computer, right, so I'll get a new laptop, I'll go, look, I'll try the Microsoft browser every time. Look, I'll just try it.
Why would you do it?
Just because try and keep faithful, right?
Did you then try and search something with Bing afterwards?
No, I never go to Bing. That's mad. That's crazy talk. But eventually you hit a web page. Now, to be honest, Edge is a lot better. So Edge is a lot better.
Right.
But yeah, back in the Internet Explorer days, every single time I'd find a web page, even a Microsoft web page sometimes would be incompatible, and I go, no, that's part of my daily life at work. I've got to go back to Chrome or Firefox or anywhere else, basically.
It's always Chrome for me. And like then when Edge first did the Chromium version, and you could go onto the Canary dev version, it worked as well as Chrome, but it used a lot less resource, right? So I just switched over to that, and I used that for probably like a year, maybe longer. And then everything started breaking on that. Like all of my stuff's still working on that, and I'm just like, what? So I'm back on Chrome again now. So like if I'm trying to do something on Chrome that uses any amount of memory and have a Teams video call, and I've just got this fan going on in the background, and it's well, I don't know what people on the other end of the phone think. Could think anything about that. But
you should get liquid cooling.
Do you know what I did? Do you know what I did? No, can I tell you what I did instead? I bought a Surface Pro X, right? Because it didn't need a fan, and the performance was amazing. Unfortunately, nothing works with it because nothing works on the ARM infrastructure. So, so I've had to go back to a Surface Pro 7 now.
I don't know if it's improved. I remember for a while there, this was like three years ago, something like 3-4 years ago. You had to have multiple browsers for the different Microsoft first-party apps. So field service would only work in Firefox or something, and marketing would work in Chrome, and so you'd find the ones which work, and then the administrator, the backend admin would work in another browser, and so you'd work out which browsers you'd use for which areas of Dynamics. So I imagine they've tidied all that up now. I haven't played with all the modules extensively, but yeah, for a while there you had to be quite an expert on the different browsers that were available and what works with where.
You did.
Yeah, but one of the problems that I found at earlier on was that many customers, they called me and said, "Oh, your Dynamics doesn't work," and I just tell them, "Okay, so I guess you're running Mac with Chrome, right?" And they're like, "How did you know?" And the problem was that Chrome on Mac was not supported at that time. So you could, the only browser that was supported on Mac was Safari. And so you had to run Safari, and nobody ran Safari on Mac, more or less.
That's right.
So it was a bit funny. I don't know if they fixed this now. I actually haven't checked, but that was the problem at that time anyway. And I don't know if the standard has improved to make it more the same.
I don't know. I just want to hop over to the chat quickly. Andreas Ekman said, on the topic of basics, sorry, Andreas, we moved on a bit since then. In the timeline, it would be good to pin an activity to stay on top before external data, or like an activity in the timeline on Dynamics.
I agree. I think that could be a good idea if it's something you're working with, and let's say that you synchronize all the contacts activities on from their web or like what they're doing from a marketing system, and you get tons of data. Like this is what they're doing and this is what they're doing, and now he's in here and is clicking around over here. Like you're getting a lot of signals, and then you have like a task, like I need to fix the customer budget for this, or customer account plan, something like that. You don't want that to like move down. Like, I have to scroll like 5 pages down before you get to that. So I think that's a good point.
The key of, I think it's a great point. Do you know what else would be awesome in that activity pane? Because I can tell you this recently nearly caused me to have a conniption, is the email. If you get a chain of it, like I do a lot of stuff on email, and there's 10, 15, 20 emails in the chain, and they're all in that activity pane because they'll need to be tracked. But actually, I only need to keep the last one that has all of the trail on it. I don't need to keep all of them. Like, and there must be a way of like ratifying that down, that it just replaces it with the last one in the chain. You can do it with your inbox, but you can't do it with the activity pane. And that's got to be coming somewhere, because I had to try and recently hand pick like 40 gigs worth of data out of my CRM system to try and get it under the current storage capacity, which was nightmarish in and of itself. So you know, that's bonkers stuff. That sounds like a real basic thing that like should happen. Don't know if that's an idealistic view or not, but
I think like having a conversations perspective on emails, that might be very useful. So you can have like, just like it looks in Outlook, where you can expand the conversation. That would at least be, from a UI perspective, make that a lot better.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if I showed you some of the activity panes for some of the contacts on my system, you just.
But then I think the other point that you're making, like trying to reduce the amount of storage, with the new feature for being able to put things into like a data lake, for instance, then we could like put old activities into cold storage, put them over there, and then synchronize them back, have a look at them through that connection. I think that would be a good way to like removing a lot of old activities and still being able to see them.
So that's what I've done in the end, actually, and also put well, in fact, Ian Connolly did it for me. He wrote Power Automate just to pull out anything that had attachments, just to pull all the attachments out into SharePoint, but still surface them back on that email record. So yeah, like that's what we had to do in the end, because I had a problem. I could have actually deleted a lot of this stuff, but except for the fact that I have an ongoing legal case with someone from December 2017, so I can't delete anything from 6 months prior to that, when we started dealing with that person. So I've just had to keep everything, because I'm not going to go through hundreds of thousands of emails to pick out the ones, and I can't do it on Advanced Find. It's impossible. So yeah, but anyway, enough about my problems.
But I think that the legal perspective of that is very relevant, because I have customers that they have to keep, if they have one case with a customer, they will keep all that customer data for 10 years, and they need to do that. So I think that's definitely relevant for some customers.
Yeah,
it relates to one of the other features which is in there, which is they're talking about, and they're vague on the details, is the archiving, having Dataverse. Having an archiving engine, and you know, I'm a guy that I'm in pre-sales at Datacom, right? So that means I write a lot of RFPs, which means tab yes, tab yes, tab yes. But when I'm not doing tab yes, the question I can't do the tab yes to is the archiving question. It's like, well, you know, tell us about your archiving solution in Dynamics, and Dataverse doesn't have an archiving engine. You've got to do stuff. You got to build your own, right? You got to build stuff. But in Wave 2, they're now saying we're going to build some kind of archiving solution. They talked about it at Airlift, but I can't say anything. But if you want to know about it, I would probably go to Ignite or register for Ignite in a month's time. But maybe don't expect too much information, because the release dates for that are like way out to next year. So don't hold your breath on deep features coming, say, next month or anything like that.
But I think for me, for that feature, it's making sure that you can be very custom about what you're going to archive and how long for. The whole process around data archival and deletion and retention, all those policies, is a big deal. And also making it viable, is it as in cost-wise, compared to sticking it in a SQL database somewhere. And that's the crux of it for me, is when you get to the enterprise scale, making it worthwhile as an archival solution that can be custom as well as being cheap. And I think it's going to be certainly one that I look forward to seeing the implementation.
Yeah,
it's sorry, go for it, Gus.
I think there's another aspect of this, and that's the GDPR aspect. Where we need to sort of, from a data retention perspective, I would actually like for each table that you can define a life cycle perspective on it. So you say like, okay, so data is created like this. If it's this. If it's this type of data and these type of cases, then we keep it live for 2 years, then it moves to cold storage for 5 years, and then we delete it. And if it's this type of data, like it's an A customer, or we have a consent for the customer, then we keep it like for 3 years and 5 years, and then we goes to cold storage, and then we delete it.
But that's basically saying we need custom logic per data, per entity, per table.
I'd like Microsoft to build
type, and
Yeah,
effectively.
Gustaf's not doing it. He just wants Microsoft to build it.
Yeah, but as long as there's a rules engine, back to the old, workflows and all that sort of thing, probably in Power FX nowadays. But the idea is of putting a load of conditions together to define what goes where, and also cascade that down to all the child records. I think that's going to be crucial for any sort of archival solution.
Yeah, I think the archival solution has mentioned that they will support child, like you have a base record, like a count, and then it would move down. And I can see Chris is doing hand signs here, so I think if I
It looks like he's guiding a plane.
Yeah.
He can speak, but I don't think he wants to.
I'm too pissed off with children, actually. No, but Gustaf's right, man. There were two things in that list, right, that stuck out to me. The one for one reason, I'll explain why shortly, but the archival, because at the moment, when you look at customers with like 750,000 plus users or even 500,000 plus users, Dataverse doesn't work. It just does not work. And and it's not because it's not enterprise ready from a technical perspective, but from a cost perspective, the juice is not worth the squeeze, right? So they have to find ways to shift and move data, and a lot of the customers I've worked with have ended up on SQL, right? So the umbrella for Dataverse is getting bigger, and I think it's great, right? The thing that I was interested in, and it's like a one-liner in this whole list, right, is they talk about security role update layering of third-party solutions. Can I tell you why I think that's important? Okay, because not for any other reason than when you look at what's happening in the default environment, you cannot get rid of it. And by default, every user in an organization, regardless of whether they have a Power Apps license or not, can build an app. Okay, so if you don't even have an Office 365 license, you can go into that default environment and create an app. But what you can do is with the maker role and the basic user role is you can control the functional aspects of what people build. So I can let people create apps, but using Dataverse, and it only works if you have Dataverse, I can stop them from sharing an app, which is quite cool. But every time you update, it rips that all out and it replaces from what I can understand, right? So I haven't actually experienced that practically. So my theory is that in default, if there's an update from a security perspective, it's not going to break that. Well, that's what I'm hoping. So I don't know, I'm guessing. But that would be really freaking cool.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I think,
That was too cool for me to understand, even. So.
Yeah, but I think it's a good point. And the other aspect I'm making from this is that if you if you have an ISV, create a custom role, and that's like a full role, and then Microsoft adds something on top of that, saying, okay, now we have a new table, for instance, then you won't be able to get that like default privilege into the system. And I've had several bugs based on this, where it's sort of all of a sudden people can't track emails, and that's because they didn't have read access to the new record creation rules, for instance, that when that came out. So I think that's if you then can have a synchronization of like having some kind of inheritance of the security role privileges, I think that's very good and very useful as well, because it would avoid these types of bugs.
Yeah, agreed. I tell you what else I thought was moving totally left of center. Oh, bye.
No, I'm not on Nicole's here. Hang on.
Okay. What I thought was super interesting is the intelligent authoring experience in Power Apps Studio, because I feel like that is going to go a long way to being able to get more people more comfortable with building and creating and doing and making stuff in Power Apps. And I know some people get a bit bent out of shape about the whole, if you're not a dev, you shouldn't be in making stuff. I know it's a debate in and of itself, but the fact of the matter is there isn't enough people to go around right now, and the more people we can get who can like at least get in and start building stuff and getting stuff working, I think the better. And I think it goes quite a long way to helping people who are less comfortable with coding to get up to speed on building stuff in Power Apps. So I don't know what you guys think.
100%, right? So even if you can have a concern about governance, right? If we look at it through a governance frame, you're worried that people are just creating their labs, and that's fine. We've got a whole governance layer on Power Platform now. What I think is good about these tools which it's natural language. So of course I'm from Australia, so we speak completely unnatural language, so it's no good for us. But for people to speak actual English, you can do this without any code knowledge. And even if you just consider this, this is a prototype system, this is a way to create rapid prototypes for the devs to do the real job on, it's still allowing people to provide value in terms of creating these apps and contributing towards their business and making their jobs easier, as well as and getting business and IT closer together. Classically it's always been a battle, right? The business wants one thing and IT, sort of a worlds apart. And this is where we got the shadow IT. This is why Salesforce, mentioned them, had that whole credit card thing where salespeople were putting down credit cards and just buying the software because bugger it, IT are too slow or IT don't want to help me, etc. So I think these tools like the pros, where you're doing the examples, which work a bit like the Excel examples, where you can say I want the format to look like this, and then it tells you what the code will look like. The natural language, so the one they've got in the guide is around the search, where you say for the search I want it to search this field and this field, and then it generates the code for you. I think this tool is fantastic. It brings more people into the whole Power Apps dev thing. But yeah, even if you just see it as prototyping, I still think it's a fantastic tool. I can't see anything bad with it.
I mean, do you really want your hardcore devs spending time building stuff that like people may or may not use, or devs are expensive resources for a lot of people. Do you really want them spending time on stuff that can be done by people that have a maybe not quite so expensive a resource, or even if we look at it from a different perspective, isn't it better in many instances to have the people who are the users in the business and know how they want to do their job day to day, building these things that are going to be the tools to enable them to do their job? Because that's why it's there, right? Is to enable people to do a better job.
Yeah, and I think that what happens if we don't have these tools that are making things easy for them, they will just build it in Excel anyway, and then just put it in SharePoint 100%. Somewhere, and then
there's no governance or anything.
No governance. IT will know nothing about it. There might be like personal information in there, and then somebody forgets it, and then there's a clear violation of Gdpr for people that still live in the EU.
And they put it on a USB drive, and
yes.
All kinds of stuff happens.
It's actually what the worst case that happened to me in this scenario was when I worked for a customer, and it was their corporate finance department. There's a very friendly guy there, and he emailed me on my not that company's email, but on my external email, their entire list of potential customers and potential businesses. It's like it is tricky, of course, and I had to tell him. I had to report it, of course, and then it's a bit of a problem. But it was, that was enclosed. That was a long time ago, and it's not a problem anymore. But it's not it's a system. We should create systems that can handle that. And I think many of the devs, they're like, oh, but they can't. People as normal citizen developers, they can't handle full ALM. No, I agree, they can't, and they shouldn't. And I think that's sort of like the ALM process should grow with the complexity of the solution. And that's, of course, a bit complex to design that and govern that. But I think it's a lot better than what the alternative is the Excel. And we don't want the Excel. So we have to always look at that. That's an alternative and make it better. And get these people. Exactly what you're saying, Alison. Like the people that actually know the business, they are the ones that can most easily build this stuff, and they are doing it already in Excel. So why not just get them in there?
Chris has a saying around this that's like better a black market than a. I can't remember what the saying is.
Better a governed free market than a black market you don't know.
Right.
And it's a Ryan Cunninghamism because and Alan Shai actually said it once, because when you walk into organizations, the fact of the matter is, number one, they have apps and flows they don't know about. Whether they know it or not, it's irrelevant. They're there. Number two, they've got the same, as Carsten said, as Gustaf said, the same thing with Excel, and the same thing with SharePoint, and the same thing with Access, and the same thing with Lotus Notes. The biggest fear of the Power Platform, and by extent Dynamics as well. Dynamics is a bit safer because it solves a targeted problem, right? But like when you look at Power Platform, it solves wicked problems. It solves problems you don't necessarily know you have. And people are afraid it's going to end up in the Lotus Notes of the world. And the problem that we have with the COE engine, John's just put it in the chat, is that COE is perceived as technology, and it's not. It's people and process as well. So when you go into an org and people whack in the starter kit, oh, joy, everything's solved, and it's not. That's like maybe one tiny, weeny little iota of the battle. The real battle is the people and the process, and making sure that people are, part of the thing. Power Platform and Dynamics in my brain are not a technology; it's a movement. That's how I've always kind of perceived it. I hope it's not like esoteric, but that's like how I see it.
I totally agree.
Are we starting a cult here?
Yes, hell yeah.
Okay,
I'm drinking the
good.
Kool-Aid.
Just checking. I've actually remind me to tell you about that this weekend. I have a hilarious story about Kool-Aid.
I could do with that.
So, that's what I used to do in the companies I used to work for. Is they didn't have technology to support what I wanted to do, and so I used to just build my own solutions. And exactly what is everybody's fear is what would happen is I had people's personal data in all kinds of weird places, and it wasn't secure. And I didn't care, because all I cared about was I'm trying to get my job done, and I was under tremendous pressure to do it, and these tools made it easier. I didn't give a shit about the security of the data. I know I should do, but I just didn't. So
of course,
So
my most common scenarios is like you're somebody who manages events for a company, and you need to know who has which allergies and like preferences for food. And that's like very sensitive GDPR data. That you really need to be careful about that kind of data. And then they think some people store it in Excel because there's no app for it.
Yeah. So and you really need to know that data, because if people have allergies and you're feeding them stuff that's going to kill them, you need to know about it. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to store it, and you have to have it securely, and hence you have to have an app. But there's no like dev who will go in and build like an allergy app that stores allergies. It's so unsexy.
No, well, why would you? And going back to the Power Platform as a movement, I believe in that, and I want that to happen, because for me, from the early days of Power Platform, the thing that struck me the most, this is probably getting a bit off topic from Wave 2, is people buy, like, let's take a CRM system, for example. People buy a CRM system and they think it's going to run their business, but it doesn't. It's a journal. It's a notebook of what they've done. It's just a record of the phone calls they've made and the emails they've had, but it's not driving activity. But the Power Platform does. You can build things in the Power Platform, and with all of the other tools that connect into everything, that drives activity, that moves things forward, that does your marketing, that can do outreach, start connecting with potential customers, get calls organized. I don't even have to book interviews anymore. All I do now is I send a find time. Right, which is not really like a Power Platform thing, but like that's how far our technology has come forward, right? Is that stuff that we used to spend a lot of time doing, we don't have to do now. I don't actually have to sit down and make a plan of my business development calls. I have everything works using a series of flows and business process flows and all of that kind of thing, right? So and that's what we want. That's what businesses want. That's what companies want. That's what users want, is something that's going to drive activity and is actually going to manage that activity and help you to measure it and see what works and see what doesn't, and help you to build your business, not just keep a record of what you've done, because actually you can just do that in Excel. Like realistically.
I think to talk of this, the concept of the movement, no doubt Power Platform hasn't got everything right yet. They're making progress, and every day they make progress. Every day you go into the Maker portal and something's changed, right? So they're making progress. I think what the big strength of Power Platform is not so much whether they're getting stuff right or wrong, but they're asking the right questions in terms of governance. In terms of like governance wasn't a thing as a consultant. As a CRM consultant, we put software in back in the day. We didn't ask about the governance, not to any real extent. And now it's for it's front and center, right? GDPR is obviously over your end of the world. It affects us as well, right? As soon as we deal with a European citizen, etc., we've got to deal with it. But back to my point, whether it's getting its stuff right or right, it's asking these questions. It's making sure you've got the right foundation. It's making businesses, large and small, think about the things that they really need to be thinking about. And governance and data protection and these kinds of things, and providing the start of a solution, and often in a lot of ways a really good solution.
I think the concern there is governance wasn't a thing because connectors weren't a thing. We couldn't get data into Twitter previously. It was all on-prem, and we didn't worry about data escaping really because it was Excel files, and that's about it. But now we've got into this whole new world of everything's an API and everything's available. We need to start thinking about our implementations in a different way. I just wanted to get back to Wave 2, really.
Sorry.
What do you think?
Why?
Because we've only got like 13 minutes left, and
Sorry,
I know it's a great conversation. But what do you think is missing, Leon? What do you think we should ask for in Wave 1 2022?
Okay, I'm badly looking through my list here.
You mentioned the S word earlier as well. So comparing it to Salesforce, what do you think is still something that D365 Power Platform needs?
You put me on the spot.
Let me think about it, and I'll come back. This might be a prompter for you. I think something that's missing is like a halfway point marketing solution that isn't quite so expensive to put in the first place for people to kind of dip a toe in, and start to see getting results before they go like, oh yeah, fine, let's stick in, let's go head first, right?
That's fair, because of course Dynamics had marketing, right? They had marketing lists, they had stuff, and then D365 marketing came along and they just sort of forgot about it. And so unless you've got D365 marketing, you got nothing. So that's a fair call, right? They need to, and it's probably the striving for adequacy. Just because you don't, if you're not getting the latest greatest marketing, you still need to sort of have the basics. So yes, I'll stick with that one. I'll continue to think what's fundamentally missing from the solution. But that's a good one. The archiving, they've got to address the archiving. For me, that's a huge one that they've announced it, but that's all they've done in this release. They haven't given any meat to the sandwich. They just say, oh yeah, archiving, that's a good idea. We'll think about that and release something next year. So for me, that's okay. Now that I'm rambling, I reckon I want to, in the next release, I want to see something a bit more substantial about archiving. I think that's a big one.
What about you, Gustaf? Anything that you'd want to see?
I would like to see a reasonable licensing model. I think everybody understands that they need to make money, but they look at the portal licensing. It disqualifies itself for case management, so it can't be used. And then we have the new entitlements. That's just strange. It's it doesn't really address what they're trying to address, so it does something else. And I don't see that either. I think that customer insight is a super cool application, but there's so many companies that won't be able to use it because it's just too expensive. I have one of the customers I'm working with have several million contacts that they work with, which would mean several million profiles, and it's it would probably cost somewhere like $20,000 a month or something like that for them to just use it. And it's maybe they can make that money back. We don't know. The business case is really hard to do. So I don't know. They have to there's lots of things that need to rethink from a licensing perspective, I think, just to make sure that and they need to have a new process of setting the licenses. They need to design the product with the license in mind. That's typically not what they're doing. They're making a cool thing like customer insight, and then they send it to the licensing department and say, can you please license this? And then the licensing people, they pull the price out of somewhere dark, and then nobody thinks that, oh, we can't use this. And then they come back and say, oh, nobody likes this marketing solution or whatever it is. So we'll just scrap it. And it's like, okay, yeah, might be the reason, or maybe you had the wrong price. So that's one thing.
Another thing that I think has the wrong price is Power Virtual Agents. Well, it's probably not the wrong price. I think that there should be like an interim model for that as well. It's like something that's maybe not full functionality, but people could kind of dip their toe in, and at least try and get some perspective on what value it might be to their business before like committing the amount of money they have to. Because I don't think they're getting much take up on that either, are they?
No, not enough. No,
I
agree with you that it's a cool feature, and I think it could be very useful. And also, I mean, they're mentioning the Power Virtual Agent in relationships to omnichannel voice as well. So I'm wondering a bit how are there like critical features in omnichannel voice that requires you to have Power Virtual Agent as well? Then you start like putting a lot of requirements on things that might destroy the entire business case. So it's a bit strange.
Yeah.
I recently got burned with the licensing model. A client, had the temerity to ask for the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook. They said, we want to be able to track stuff against contacts, but we don't have any first-party apps. We just want to install the Outlook app, and the licensing around that is a nightmare. Because they also wanted to manage accounts. They had the audacity to want to, create accounts in the Dataverse database, and the Teams member license doesn't give you account. But if you've got a Dataverse license, it does, right? So it's not, you would expect a team member license would give you just common data model, right? Just the basic element, but it doesn't get, so that there's this whole mismatch of, what Teams member gives you, what Dataverse gives you, and it would be so easy to fix that stuff if anyone just sat down and looked at the product and go, okay, now that one's probably going to go away, right? With the whole Teams getting access to Dynamics, that one's probably going to go away. But it's clear that it's just sort of been this incremental add, and there's not anyone looking at it from, as you say, from a product versus a license perspective, and just consolidating that in a semi-sensible way. It drives me nuts. I'm off my soapbox now.
I think sometimes they're just like looking at what's driving cost, and then they're multiplying that by like 1,000, and then they're charging customers for that. Like for instance, the SQL capacity. It's like, we from one hand they're saying the Dataverse is awesome, you should be using it for everything, and then on the other hand they're saying like, we'll charge you like your life and your leg for Dataverse data. It's like, and by the way, also API usage. And then it's like, okay, so what's the strategy here? Like,
portals, right? Portals. So many opportunities. I've got to exclude portals these days because of the licensing. I know of plenty of consultants, certainly down here, where with AI Builder, they'll just build their own engine rather than use the AI Builder, because the licensing it's just not friendly. So unfortunately, and we see this a lot, right? That the licensing stifles the innovation, and that's what kills me as a consultant, right? I know the potential of the software, and then the licensing just kills that innovation. That drives drives a dagger into my heart. I hate seeing that, but hopefully Microsoft will fix it.
I've got a theory quickly. I was chatting to somebody about this today, actually. So like, I had a call with Steven Siciliano some time back, and you can kind of break down the licensing into two phase pieces, right? It's consumption and connectivity. It's one or the other, right? Most people will negotiate on the connectivity piece, i.e. per user, per app license. I want to get it for X amount instead of Y amount. And then you can't really negotiate the consumption piece, because that's kind of like the lights being kept on. The dual model is difficult to manage, because people can't understand why they've got a license for connectivity, but then still have to pay X from a consumption perspective. And then when you look at tools like Mendix and that, they have a consumption-based model, right? It's the dual piece that confuses everyone. Like when I talk to customers, I always say, don't look at the licensing guide and draw a table. It's not going to work. Consumption, connectivity, okay? You're having to pay for both at some point, right? Just trying to figure out what's and how. The thing that bothers me is the per app piece. I just think it's a half-assed effort at a consumption-based model. I know what's coming in the future, but I just think that piece, they've just got to get right. And if Microsoft can get that consumption-based model right for not necessarily Dynamics, but from a platform perspective, oh man, we're going to be moving up past Mendix in that quadrant. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, agreed. So we've got 4 minutes remaining, which probably just means it's time for me to say a massive thank you to Gustaf Westerlund and Leon Tribe. Leon, thank you for getting up at an ungodly hour to join us.
That's all good.
You know, I'm glad that the fame from Radio Free Nigeria didn't stop you from joining our lowly power platform.
As I was saying earlier, it was the guy that said, "Oh, can you come onto my sort of podcast?" And then suddenly I'm live on the radio with him, which was interesting. So it's the nature of these things. So yeah, interesting times in the world of Dynamics. But no, thank you for having me on here. It's good to see. Some of you I catch up semi-regularly or virtually, but it's fantastic to see your faces. We should do this again. We should do this in person sometime.
We should do this. Yes, indeed, we should. Talking of which, before I do this, there is links to Gustaf and Leon's Twitter accounts in the chat, so do please go and follow them. And if you want to come and see me on our stand at South Coast Summit, you can win a Fender Lego set where you can build a Stratocaster and an amp, which it's ages 18 plus though, so Chris, you can't have it. Just saying.
Physical age or mental age?
Oh no, mental age on toast, man. I mean, this is basic. I just want to say, Leon, I have a photo of you in a very disturbing bunny outfit from our last meeting.
Oh yes, fond memory.
Oh, I think I need to see that.
See, Gustaf, not so much. Gustaf, I just got a high five, but Leon, that was
high five.
Yeah.
that bunny outfit. It was a trip just watching you.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Excellent. Is there anything else we need to plug, Carlos, in the middle of your dinner?
No, just next time, really, with
Yuka and Megan.
Yuka and Megan, yeah, we're just doing what Gustaf and Leon did quite brilliantly there. We discussed the state of the world and everything. So with Gustaf, with Yuka and Megan Walker, so 2 other legends and heroes of the scene, and that will finish us off for the year quite nicely, I think.
Yes, unless we do a greatest hits for December, maybe. But, yeah. So all that remains is for me to thank you all very much for coming. Thanks, Gustaf and Leon. Really enjoyed that, and thank you everybody for joining us and for putting your questions in. And the recording will be up on the YouTube channel soon in case you want to rewatch it because it was so wonderful. I don't know why you wouldn't get the view count up. And we look forward to seeing you next month, and we will say goodbye.
Yep. See you South Coast.
Oh,
yes. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
See you Friday, Gustaf. That'd be brilliant.